Reading allows you to travel the world, and some writers are good at taking us on that journey through their writings. Welcome to Oral Tradition and another adventure in Guyanese literature. Welcome to another virtual edition of Oral Tradition. Let's go across to the UK and invite a singer, composer, musician, traveler, adventurer, a lover of sports, to talk to us about his books, namely SUGAR'S SWEET ALLURE, The DOMINO Masters of DEMERARA, In Pursuit of Betterment, and Daughter of the Great Rivers. There are many major issues covered in these books. Khalil, welcome to Oral Tradition.
Thank you very much, Petamber. It's a great honor to be in your company and to share some thoughts with you on your lovely program.
Thank you very much. I said reading can do so much. And it's the writers, the writers, the people who make content that are important. We seem to forget that almost in every endeavor of life, writing is very, very important. Let's talk about your writing. Most of your writing harps back to your place of birth, Guyana. We'll talk about locating you in Guyana later, but let's open with your first book, Sugar's Sweet Allure, because it set the scene for you being here, you being able to write, the research, and the production of your book.
I mean, essentially, we always I grew up in Guyana, and we were told that each of us has a story. And I was always encouraged to read widely, not wildly, in my high school years in Guyana. And as a youngster, I loved reading. Reading was of real importance to me. In fact, I was even banished from my English class by my English teacher to say, go away, read, and write something about what you've read. That was my kind of homework, which is peculiar, but I loved it. And then I started writing short stories, which I've been told have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the end has got to have a twist at the very, very final line of the story. So you leave the reader up, as we say, the garden path, and then at the very end, you turn the story on them. So I had this ambition to write from the age of about 15, but then I left Guyana very early, about 1920, to study in the UK. And writing took a back seat. And I took the opportunity in England to play a lot of cricket and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that, obviously.
Yeah.
But then I was told by a prominent writer from Guyana, who's no longer with us now, E.R. Brathwaite, that writing is something, it wouldn't give you a living. but you'll enjoy it a lot. Perhaps live your life and then afterwards start writing.
Have you taken that
So,
advice? Have you taken that
well,
advice?
I took the advice so literally that I stopped writing completely, apart from writing policy documents and financial reports and things like that in my profession, because I studied financial management and that was my career. And
Yeah.
so writing was still going on, but for a different audience and different purpose. So I never lost that, and I continue to read a lot.
Right.
Um, so the advice eventually came to fruition when I took early retirement. So I waited for 4 to 5 years before I started writing seriously.
Right. 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 So, what triggered you apart from retirement? What triggered your first book?
Yeah, as you said, I'm also a trained Indian musician. I sing a bit and compose, and I love our culture through that route. And I thought that I better find out a bit more about my heritage and where my ancestors came from. And I found that somebody had already started doing some work on that. So I decided to find out a bit more about my ancestors. And one of my cousins had one of these immigration passes
Ah.
of a young fellow called Hussein Ali. He was only 18 and he came from Uttar Pradesh. And what intrigued me about this fellow was that on the certificate, instead of saying laborer or cane cutter or whatever, it had agriculturist.
Ah.
So I thought, what is an 18-year-old youngster from Uttar Pradesh? How did they get this message that he was an agriculturist on his immigration pass? So I followed that up a little bit, and then there were some difficulties in trying to get to the correct information about everybody or the whole ancestry. So I had a reason to visit Guyana in 2011. This is 1 year after my retirement, and my daughter was doing her master's in law, and the research topic was something to do with the rainforests in Guyana and the role of the indigenous people in that. So that's the reason why I came to Guyana with her.
Right.
And I started to do some more research on this Hussein Ali chap. And at the Walter Rodney Center, I bumped into Ivan Radi there, the
Yes.
great historian. I think you know him very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was sitting there, and I had a brief chat with him. He had just made a documentary as well with David Davidine
Mm-hmm.
about indentureship, and I saw that program on Channel 4. So I thought I was standing in a room with great historical scholarship and that kind of thing. So I carried on, and then I started writing the story. I decided not to write the true story about my own family. Like a lot of people, a lot of great historians do their research, and I encourage them to do that. But
Okay.
I decided to research further the whole background of the indentureship of Indian people to Guyana and the story about the journey on the sea and what happened in Guyana and so on.
So you had to travel to India.
Well, no, no, because of technology nowadays, you can Google and you can be walking in a village quite easily. And so I did that kind of stuff. And I had uh, very good information about the location, the reasons, the problems, and some great books written about this. But I wanted to write a fictional story
Yeah. Uh-huh.
about the journey, about this Mustafa Ali, and I followed him through the Great Trunk Road, or the Grand
And
Trunk Road is called.
right, and you've made an interesting story. Tell us quickly in a few words the gist of his story.
Well, essentially, when the indentureship started in 1838, the first two ships arrived in Guyana. Everybody knows about those two ships. And they apparently had some of the wrong people who were required to work in sugar estate because they were from the Dangar tribe in West Bengal. They were the hill people, they called them hill coolies. And
Yeah.
they were not really cut out for sugarcane plantations, certainly not in a mosquito infested estate in Greenhope or something like that in Guyana. So they couldn't cope with that. So they got the wrong people, and a lot of them died. And it was a quite sad story, actually.
Yeah.
And but what happened? The indentureship was suspended, and my story started with Mustafa when it was beginning to resume. And in those years, 1843, there were no steamships still, nor railway line across India. So this
Okay.
Grand Trunk Road is very important. It goes back to 300 BC,
Mm-hmm.
which cuts across northern India for trade as part of the Silk Trade route.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you might remember, Rudyard Kipling wrote a wonderful book called Kim about the adventures of this
Yes.
young boy
Yes. Yeah.
on the Grand Trunk Road.
Mm-hmm.
And that road still exists now, but it's not called Grand Trunk Road now. I think it's called HS2 or something like that.
Ah.
It's a proper highway now. So I followed his story from the village and how he trekked the way through, and I picked out all the areas that he could have reached on this journey from Uttar Pradesh or Kanpur right across to Bengal, or Calcutta, where the, the immigration depot was. And the one in those years that was used was called the Bhawanipur depot. And I have a picture of that depot, so I knew how to describe it.
Okay.
And all the action along the road and the experiences that Mustafa encountered are based on a belief which I would like to share with your viewers, that our ancestors were not just ordinary laborers who were not educated.
Mm-hmm.
They had access to brilliant philosophies, from the Ramayana, Bhagavad
Yes.
Gita,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the Quran, the Guru Granth Sahib, and all of those things. So they were wizened people. They were not stupid. And that's the reason why I created Mustafa Ali to represent that knowledge.